His rejection stung, but your silence, that's what's truly haunting him now. The absence of your voice holds more weight than 1,000 explanations ever could. If you chose quietness over pleading, if you refused to chase or convince him of your value, you might believe you've simply moved on without impact. The reality cuts far deeper. Your refusal to speak is accomplishing something your arguments never would achieve. Point 1. The unexpected pain of receiving nothing back. Rejection carries built-in assumptions. The person ending things anticipates emotional feedback. Tears streaming down faces, desperate inquiries, fury erupting, lengthy justifications, or minimum one final attempt at persuasion. Though rarely acknowledged openly, dismissing someone creates an invisible contract. My choice still holds enough significance to provoke visible pain. Your complete withdrawal shatters this expectation entirely. Zero theatrics, zero emotional turbulence, zero confirmation of importance. This absence unsettles at profound levels because silence compels him to face consequences alone without your presence softening the blow. Point 2. Disappearing eliminates his advantage. Throughout rejection scenarios, control appears entirely one-directional. His internal monologue runs, "My decision, my ending, my authority over outcomes." Yet the instant you vanish emotionally, dynamics transform radically. Your wordless departure declares, "Convincing you holds no appeal. My self-value demands I simply leave." That statement damages pride more brutally than any tearful scene possibly could, because suddenly he's no longer occupying the throne of your emotional kingdom. Point 3. Egos crumble without audience feedback. The human sense of self survives on constant input. Favorable or critical feedback matters less than receiving acknowledgement, period. What destroys ego completely? Absolute nothingness. When quietness replaces conversation, no confirmation exists. That he remains desired. Zero proof declares him irreplaceable. No evidence suggests rejecting you granted him dominance. Your stillness becomes reflective glass, and within that mirror surfaces something terrifying. Perhaps his importance was vastly overestimated. Point 4. Quiet minds create their own chaos. Explanations provide closure, but silence, it births endless wondering. When you cease defending yourself or clarifying intentions, his thoughts begin laboring over time. Questions emerge that never existed previously. Did my judgment fail completely? Was her strength something I completely misread? Why didn't she battle for this connection? And the question carrying maximum danger. Did something genuinely valuable slip through my fingers unnoticed? You're unavailable now to clarify, comfort, or diminish his growing uncertainties, so they multiply unchecked. Point 5. Memory replays without your interference. Silence eliminates noise pollution. Absent your physical presence, his consciousness replays stored moments. Your composed demeanor, your patience during difficulties, how you appeared without summons. Details he overlooked during your availability now amplify dramatically because distance reshapes perception completely. What seemed commonplace before suddenly registers as extraordinarily rare. Point 6. Your quietness broadcasts elevated consciousness. Many mistake silence for surrender, but emotionally developed individuals recognize it, signals fortitude. Your wordless exit communicates self-discipline, self-honoring, established emotional limits. It announces, creating chaos to demonstrate value doesn't interest me. That understanding strikes especially hard if he anticipated your collapse, because abruptly you appear more powerful in absence than you seemed while fighting to maintain connection. Point 7. Dismissal feels secure until silence introduces doubt. Rejection feels manageable when the dismissed party remains emotionally accessible, Provided you're lingering nearby, he experiences continued desire. He maintains control. He assumes returning remains permanently optional. Your silence destroys that security entirely. Presently, he cannot determine your emotional location, whether healing has occurred, whether forward movement happened, whether opportunities remain available, and uncertainty produces discomfort, particularly for someone convinced they possessed final authority. Point 8. Silence awakens replacement anxiety. You didn't promise eternal waiting. You didn't claim exclusive capability for loving him. You offered exactly nothing. And nothingness permits one nightmare scenario. You might be constructing existence without him featured anywhere. That consideration becomes unbearable for someone who assumed irreplaceability, because presently another person could enjoy your laughter. Another individual might treasure your companionship. Someone else could select you completely, and he possesses zero access to prevent it. Point 9. Observation behaviors emerge unexpectedly. This phase introduces peculiar patterns. Social media profiles receive visits. Mutual acquaintances face subtle questioning about you. Accidental messages materialize from nowhere. Not because sudden clarity arrived regarding desires, but because your silence manufactured emotional withdrawal symptoms, and withdrawal generates intense anxiety. Your unavailability forces him experiencing precisely what you endured, minus your supportive presence cushioning impact. Point 10. Silent exits challenge his narrative. When you refuse arguing or pursuing, it disrupts his internal story completely. He required you confirming his belief. My choice was correct. But your dignified departure whispers alternative truth. Perhaps mistakes were made, because genuinely confident individuals don't beg for reconsideration, and emotionally secure people don't chase those who dismiss them. Your silence restructures the entire account, not through verbal debate, but through demonstrated self-respect. Understanding true motivation. This isn't tactical. Clarity matters here. You're not silent to inflict punishment or manipulate outcomes. You're silent for self-protection purposes, and paradoxically, that authenticity explains its profound effect. Because when someone prioritizes self-respect above attachment, inherent value reveals itself naturally. You didn't vanish to play games. You disappeared because your worth doesn't require external validation. The psychological transformation he never anticipated. Rejection typically produces relief initially. However, silence converts relief into loss gradually. Freedom arrives first, then emptiness follows. Because he didn't merely reject you, he forfeited access to your emotional energy completely. And emotional energy creates dependency. Once removed, the vacancy screams loudly. Silence terminates the illusion of command. Provided you keep responding, he maintains control. When responses cease, prediction becomes impossible. He cannot manage the unfolding story. He cannot dictate conclusions. That control loss disturbs him fundamentally, because presently you own your narrative exclusively. Why admission rarely comes. He might never verbalize, "Your silence affected me profoundly." Pride seldom permits such honesty, yet behavior reveals absolute truth. Restlessness, curiosity, regret, delayed recognition. Silence plants seeds growing quietly beneath surface awareness. Regardless of outcomes, you reclaim power. Here lives the most critical truth. Your silence doesn't aim at manufacturing his return. It focuses on returning to yourself. If he returns, it's because he finally recognized your value accurately. If he doesn't, it's because your silence liberated you from someone incapable of choosing you fully. Either scenario restores your power completely. Silence delivers lessons words cannot. Words invite debate and contradiction. Silence remains indisputable. Your quiet exit teaches him essential truths. Not everyone begs, not everyone waits indefinitely, not everyone sacrifices themselves for love. Some people depart with grace intact, and that lesson embeds permanently long after you've gone. What your silence communicates without sound. Without uttering syllables, you declared, "Mutual selection deserves me. I won't diminish myself seeking acceptance. I value myself sufficiently to abandon rejection behind." Those messages resonate even through silence. If maintaining silence challenges you, silence demands courage. Resisting the urge to explain your suffering takes strength. If you're struggling, remember, you're not ignoring him, you're honoring yourself. Healing doesn't require witnesses or audiences. Eventual understanding arrives. Perhaps months forward, perhaps years distant, a moment will surface when he realizes, "She didn't lose me, I lost her." And by then, your silence will have already transformed you completely. Final truth stands firm. Your silence following his rejection isn't weakness displayed. It's closure without permission granted. It's choosing peace above validation, strength above attachment, self-worth above fear. And whether he admits it eventually or not, your silence is accomplishing precisely what it needs to accomplish. Welcome to Psychology Wisdom. If you're fascinated by the hidden mechanisms of mind and heart, make sure to subscribe and activate notifications so you never miss insights that could revolutionize how you perceive reality. And if this resonated with you, hit that like button. It genuinely helps us reach more people who need to hear this message.